Can we test the sound? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's probably good. We're gonna check my.
Thanks for the yummy candies, Dave.
Yay. That's good. I had no use for them actually, which is a sad thing to say, but it was a good use for them.
Yeah, everybody was very appreciative.
Just a reminder, everyone, we are live on YouTube. Not that I'm sure anyone's going to be opposed to us talking about candy.
I know. President Candyman Wagers right there.
There we go. You see the cup? The cup's good too. Yeah.
Love it.
I'm on now. Can you hear that? Okay.
All right. Well, my clock reads 9 o'clock, so it's okay. We will go ahead and call the meeting to order. Just to start out with, clerk, will you call the roll?
Sure. Trustee Wagers,
Here.
Trustee Greeley,
Here.
Trustee Oppenheimer,
Here.
Trustee Doan,
Here.
Trustee Gregory, it's not here. Trustee Esty.
Here.
Okay. Nancy, Trustee Gregory is the only not present.
Okay, thank you very much. Just like to remind everybody of the core values of the district. Respect, dignity, honesty, responsibility, and teamwork is what we're all about. And with that, I'll go ahead and go straight to the superintendency, and we'll discuss the fall reopening for the Boise School District Pandemic Operation Plan.
Good morning, President Wagers trustees. This is Lisa Roberts. I'm going to do a quick just update for all of you on moving to phase 2. So a week ago Monday, we began our phase 1 of getting our pre-K through 2nd grade students in. We gave you an update last week that really is going quite well. Teachers have been diligent about safety protocols and students have been great about it. Parents have been doing a nice job of not sending their kids to school when they don't feel well. So because that's gone well, we are ready to move to phase 2. However, just so that you're aware, cases in Ada County are on the rise. So we've been very diligently watching that and have reached out to Central District Health now. Actually talked to them 3 times this week and talked with Dr. Mark Nassar from St. Alphonsus to make sure that they felt that we were in a good spot to move to phase 2. And they did feel like we're in a good place to move to phase 2. Since bringing students back to the building in this phased-in approach, we have only seen 1 case of a student in that age group have a positive, be a positive for COVID. And that student actually came from home, from their home, or I'm not sure exactly where exactly, but it was not, there was no transmission in the schools. And because of that 1 case, we did wind up quarantining 1 other student out of an abundance of caution. But that's the good news is we're not seeing transmission in our schools, which I think is really important, even since school started. So it's really important to understand that difference between positive cases and quarantining. I think sometimes our schools think that since they know that there's maybe 4 staff members out or 5 students out, that all those people are positive, and that has not been the case for us. What's been the case is that 1 person has been positive, not a transmission in the school district, got it from somewhere out in the community, maybe, even from a parent. And then once that positive case is identified to us, we very carefully work with Central District Health, we contact trace that, and then we quarantine any folks that we think could be at risk of an exposure. And then they are out for that exposure. So our practices are working because none of those ones that we've quarantined have come back positive. And like I said, no transmission within the school district. So I'm going to pause right there real quick to see if there's any questions about our intent to move to phase 2 next week. Okay.
Mr. President.
Trustee Doan.
Am I the only one having trouble hearing Lisa?
I am able to hear, but is there a way to get a little closer to the mic, maybe, Lisa?
Yes.
Deputy Superintendent Roberts, I should say.
I'll be a little bit closer to the camera as well. I think that's how this is working. I have a new computer in my office, an updated computer.
Thank you.
Is that better, Dennis?
I do have one question, Superintendent Roberts, just about, so even though numbers right now are going up in Ada County, we feel like our system, the internal system of the school district, we feel like we haven't seen an escalation in what we're looking at.
President Wagers, trustees, absolutely. The great part about that is that we actually have this week seen fewer positive cases identified of either employees or students than we had in other weeks previously. So we do feel good about where we're at with this, and we feel really good about the procedures that we're using, the protocols we're using. And that's why I know it's really difficult for people to understand. They're like, you're taking this so slow, but we've done this for 2 weeks with pre-K2. We're going to bring 3-6 in and do it for 2 weeks and carefully watch that. And the great thing is, like, the 3-6 teachers are going down and asking the pre-K2 teachers, okay, so what did you do about this, situation with your class? And then we anticipate that we'll do a, more cross collaboration with our secondary schools, with our elementary schools to say, okay, what worked well? What did you have to revamp? If you go into any school right now, you'll see the hand sanitizer all over the school. You'll see the dots on the hallway floors to let the kids know where they need to be standing apart from each other. You go into a classroom, all the kids are in masks. It's so impressive. They are doing such a good job with it. All the teachers are in masks. So we do feel like we are in a good spot to continue on with that phasing. But we told the Boise Education Association last night, we fully understand that we have to be very careful, very slow, and very deliberate about this rollout.
Thank you. Any other questions for Deputy Superintendent Roberts?
Okay, so the next thing I just want to talk about quickly is we're going to have a very minor calendar change, and it wouldn't be something that the board would need to vote on, but just so that you know, and what's great about this is this came from our teachers. So at the end of the quarter, elementary teachers have a full day to prepare for parent-teacher conferences, to work on report cards. Normally they have a half day to work on. And then but a few years ago, we switched that to a full day to work on report cards, and then to also prepare for parent-teacher conferences. So that date was supposed to be Friday the 16th. Well, Friday is one of our in-person days. So teachers reached out and asked if we could switch that Friday, and principals did too, switch that Friday to Monday the 19th, which is a virtual day. Feeling like all the kids are home that day anyway, that would be much easier on families. If that was a day that, and we wouldn't be losing one of our precious days with in-person learning. So we made that decision yesterday, and that will go out after this meeting in a notice along with moving to phase 2, and then we'll put that notice out to families so that they're aware. But we're excited that won't that we won't wind up with another day out for kids who normally would be on in-person learning with our new phased-in approach. And I'm going to turn it over to Director Donovan. She's going to talk about our Boise Online School timeline for second semester, which I do realize it's October 1st, and that seems ridiculously early to be talking about it, but the sooner we can be prepared, the better. So, Director Donovan.
Great. President Wagers, trustees. We learned some important lessons in the process of our July enrollment. While we felt that we did a good job giving the logistics of how to register, we really didn't do a very good job of giving the implications of what significant enrollment changes will how that impacts a family in the brick and mortar as well as in the school. So that feedback has helped us guide our process going forward into our second semester. Because we're going to offer our families the option to make that shift either to Boise Online School or out of Boise Online School. Because the implications we want to make sure are clear that there will be some staffing changes if the enrollment is a significant enough of a change. For example, if 10 second graders moved from Boise Online back to Washington Elementary, then we may need to add staffing back at Washington Elementary. In that it might be a combo, it might be an actual full teacher, which then will shift some kids that are in the brick and mortar Washington, their classrooms, as well as the classrooms that they left at Boise Online. We may need to do some shifting there because we've now taken 10 out of a class potentially. And of course, it's never going to be neat and clean that all the kids came out of one class. So there will be some shifting there, and we want to make sure that our parents are aware of that. We also know that something that's very important is that before that second semester, they need to know exactly when those class placements will be posted and when they will hear from their teacher, when they'll know who their teacher is at that brick and mortar or even in the Boise Online School. Those were two things that we heard loud and clear from our patrons, that's very important that they know those things. And so we started our timeline backing it up from the December 18th, which is the last day before we start into winter break. At that point, we need to make sure that all of our families know their teacher and have heard from their teacher going forward, the teacher that they'll start with in January. So then backing that up, we backed up our timeline detailing all of the things that we had to do in order to make that happen. We worked closely with our counselors to make sure that they were in the loop on what procedures that they need to put in place to get all the information, especially with our secondary students. And they were able to more efficiently do the work that they did. Instead of in July, they did a lot of back and forth with students. They now have come up with a way that they can do the work that they needed to do and get it all done in a more timely manner. We then sent that through our SIS group, which is our Infinite Campus team, and made sure that the timeline that we put forth is doable for them as well, because we want to make sure that all of this gets done, but yet we don't want to put a huge burden on staff members. And then again, we need time to do the actual staffing of the moving of the staff. And so again, we needed to include that piece in and include the BEA to make sure that they're aware of how we're doing that process. So the communication piece of that, we needed to make sure that we can't do it early enough, because we have to do it when all of our secondary kids, all of our schools are back in person at least every other day, which means we can't do it any earlier than the 19th of October because our secondary aren't really in school yet. So we're looking at starting that communication process after those kids have been in for a week, and then make the timeline the week of November 2nd through the 6th. That would be the week that families would have to make that commitment for second semester. At that point, all kids would have been in school for at least 2 weeks. The secondary would have been in school for 2 weeks. In a perfect world, we would have waited until everyone was back full time, but we would have never been able to get all of the work done if we waited until after that November 9th, the week after that. So we are waiting until all of the kids have been back in that every other week. Once we put that communication together, we want to make sure that it's very simple and clear. We also heard that while we thought we communicated the what and how, we didn't do a very good job with the why and why that needs to happen. And we needed to make sure that they have a person to actually speak to when they're enrolling. So we will ask our families to reach out to their home school, their neighborhood school, if they are making a change in their placement. If they're not making a change, if they want to stay at Brick and Mortar Washington, or if they want to go to Boise Online, or if they want to stay in Boise Online, they don't do anything. But if they want to make that change, they will contact their school. That school can take that information and answer any questions, instead of in the summer when we had them do a form, then they had to reach out to someone else about any questions they had. So we feel that's a better way to make this process a little easier for families. Once we get that communication outlined and detailed out, we'll share that with several of our parents in our community to make sure that everything is clear for them, so that when we actually do go out with that communication, we've had eyes on it from parents, because we may think it's clear, but we're not the users that are actually having to do the work. So we'll vet that through several parents in our community. Do you have any questions about this process and where we're at?
Any questions for Director Donovan?
President Wagers, this is Trustee Gregory.
Trustee Gregory, go ahead.
Director Donovan, it sounds like a very thoughtful process this time. And I think, we learned we were doing our best in July and August. And now we've refined it to be more responsive to the feedback that we've gotten. I think your team has done a great job of listening and being realistic about the work that we have ahead of us, and honoring what families want to do, as well as what our system can bear and what we're able to do in a timeline. And so I think backing it up is a great strategy. So that it sounds very thoughtfully planned, and in a way that we can communicate to our families the process pretty clearly. So I'm really excited about the move into second semester. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Trustee Wade. Trustee.
Any other questions or comments for Director Donovan? Thank you, Debbie and team. We're always working on communication. And that will be a never-ending task to do the best job we can for all our constituents. So we appreciate you tackling that difficult task. I think we'll move on to the next. Lisa, do you have more? Or Director Roberts? Boy, I'm having a hard time today. Deputy Superintendent Roberts.
President Wagers, it's all good. No, I think that's our update for now. If anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, I guess we will move on. Next on the agenda is the acceptance of Trustee Troy Roan's resignation. If anybody would like to discuss, well, first we probably would need a motion and then we can go into discussion on that.
President Wagers,
Trustee Gregory.
I move we accept the resignation of Trustee Roan from the board effective today.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Trustee Oppenheimer, I believe. Is there any discussion or comments on the resignation of Trustee Roan?
President Gregory or President Wagers?
We're all good. Trustee Gregory.
I just want to be on record for saying thank you for the 9.5 years of service that Trustee Roan has given to the district and the patrons of this district. His heart is a true heart of education and serving families and supporting staff. And he has continually, been dependable in being our check in those regards. What policy changes mean for students, how staff is impacted, and he has been, he's always shared his opinion and he's listened, which are two traits that make a good trustee. And I know that he's been responsive to the administration in listening to their explanations, and yet he's challenged and checked them with his own observations. We've really appreciated his higher ed view because he gets the students that we graduate. And so his expectation has been one that said, we need students prepared to succeed in higher education field. And he's brought that perspective to us, and just appreciate his candor and goodwill on the board, and he will be missed.
Thank you, Trustee Gregory. Any other comments? I too would. I'd like to say thanks to Troy. Just he did a great job. He was a good friend and a good friend of the district. Obviously, I'll miss his good questions on data and the questions of always on testing and the scientific mind that he brought. It was a good addition to the board. So that will be missed.
President Wagers.
Vice President Greeley.
Sorry, it's hard to kind of say anything after what Trustee Gregory said, because she said it so well about Troy, but definitely will miss him and appreciate his wit and his real dedication. So just wanted to add that in too.
Thank you. All right, any more comments? Okay, hearing none, I guess we should take a vote on accepting the resignation of Trustee Troy Roan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we need to do the declaration of vacancy, which is what happens after a trustee leaves office. And Maria, I'm going to let you speak to that, or Vice President Greeley, I'm going to let you speak to that if possible.
Okay, thank you, President Wagers. It's just a policy, 1130, Office of the Trustee declared vacant, that we just have to basically declare that a seat is vacant and have an action item on it. It's pretty straightforward. So
Great.
Would you like me to go ahead and make the motion?
I would entertain a motion.
Okay, so I move approval to declare the trustee seat vacant.
Is there a second?
Second.
I think I was seconded by Trustee Oppenheimer. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we'll move on to the trustee appointment process. I've asked Vice President Greeley if she would kind of run this process for the board, or I mean, not run the process, but at least establish the process. Obviously, the board will run the process. So I'm going to let her go ahead and speak to that as well.
Thank you,
Vice President Greeley.
Thank you, President Wagers. So trustees, in the past, we have followed just kind of, we've had a process that we've followed. And because of that, we had asked the administration to give us a timeline, a possible timeline, and they offered that to us, whichever received that email. And so today what we really need to discuss is, what do we want to do for the process of filling this seat? We can do what we have done in the past, which is to have candidates put in an application. We can, I mean, we pretty much have a lot of options. We could even nominate somebody and vote. So really the purpose today is to figure out what we as trustees want to do for this process. And in that, kind of looking at what are the pieces of this process that we really value, you know, whether it's making sure that it's transparent, that we get the best person. So it's just wanted to open it up and ask what you value in this process, what's important to you in the process of filling this seat.
Great, thank you, Vice President Greeley. One thing I'd like to point out is on the agenda, we have a committee associated with this. That committee is not in charge of appointing the next trustee. That committee is in charge of helping us to develop the process and kind of manage it for the board as well. So we don't have to all be involved in, you know, in every step of this way. But that committee of Vice President Greeley, Trustee Doan, Director Thamert, Ryan Hill, Dan Holler, and Clerk Mast will kind of help manage it and, you know, collect the applications as whatever process we see fit. I appreciate the timeline getting put out there. I mean, I think that's great. But I would like to hear, you know, comments and questions from trustees and other interested parties. Oh, you're on mute, Nancy, I think.
I thought I unmuted. Okay, now I'm unmuted. Having been through this process a number of times, I think one of the I think the process is more easily managed, but the responsibility that comes to board members with the obligation of making an appointment is that board members consider what characteristics or skill sets would be beneficial for our board to acquire with an appointment. And that discussion has always been helpful to me, to say, okay, what do we need? And rather than, I mean, I think our process we can do whatever we want, but just in terms of deliberation, each of us should think, what characteristics would benefit our board at this time? And other than that, I think our process of taking applications, finding out who's interested in serving on the board, and then sorting through those applications as a board, and then, you know, whatever our process is would be great, but deliberating about what we're looking for. You know, it's different than an election, because the responsibility now is on the board to appoint. And the electorate will get a chance to weigh in on this at our next election, when this person will have to run for election again. And so those are just some thoughts I want to throw out there.
Thank you, Trustee Gregory. Other thoughts?
President Wagers.
Trustee Oppenheimer.
Could you remind us, speaking of what Trustee Gregory just said, the timeline for Troy had 5 years left of his term, is that correct?
I think he had 4, but I think what happens is when we fill a seat, they will actually be up for election at the next election. So I know, like, you and I are up for election in 2 years. We'll actually have a third person open for this. So it offsets our seats, if I'm correct. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I may be off on that, but I think that's correct.
President
Trustee Wagers. Okay.
Sorry, President Wagers. You're correct. And basically this is, as far as I understand, once we appoint, the candidate has to run at the upcoming election. So they'll run in 2 years, and then they'll have to run again when it's their seat, which is going to be 2 years later.
Could I make an addition, please?
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. And Trustee Gregory, go ahead.
And one more clarification is that when they run in 2 years, they will not be running for Wager or Oppenheimer's seat. They will be running for the seat that they hold. So where in just a regular election, the top 2 vote getters get the vote, it would be the top 2 in your race and the top 2 or the top 1 in the other race. So essentially you'll be running for your 2 seats, and that person will be running for that seat. Does that make any sense? This happened when Brian Cronin ran, there were 2 different segments of the election. So you keep the seats in the lanes that they're in. And Superintendent Dennis may be able to explain that. Is that clear? Does anybody have any questions about that?
Thank you, Trustee Gregory. Superintendent Dennis, you look like you were chomping.
I don't know that I was chomping. I appreciate it, President Wagers. Yeah, if just to kind of clear up, the ballot will actually in the next election will be 2 separate ballots. So there will be a 2-year seat and a 6-year seat for President Wagers and Trustee Oppenheimer. You guys will be running for the 6-year seats, and then whoever is in this seat will run for a 2-year seat. So it's a completely separate ballot at that election, just to clear that up.
My understanding is not a separate ballot, but on the ballot, they are differentiated.
2 different votes, correct?
Right.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent Dennis and Trustee Gregory, for the clarification. Any other questions, either on what that seat looks like, or the process, or even skills and attributes that we're looking at for candidates?
President Wagers.
Trustee Oppenheimer.
I want to talk a little bit about the process, and for me, transparency is really important, and making sure that everyone is aware of who's applying and whatnot. I will say that I'm not, even though we have the option to do this, and I don't know how everyone else feels, I'm not in favor of the board just appointing or nominating and appointing somebody without giving the ability for anyone who wants to run. I do think that we need to open it up and allow for that process to play itself out. So I will say that. And also in regards to election, oftentimes you can see a lot of people putting their names in because they don't have to run a campaign. And so I would like to get a feel for how any candidate that puts their name in is feeling about running the election, because we certainly, it takes a long time to learn this job. And so we would want somebody that would be interested in running next time that is open.
Great. Thank you, Trustee Oppenheimer. Any comments, questions on her comments or the process in general?
President Wagers.
Trustee Gregory.
I agree with Trustee Oppenheimer that when you read in the charter, the filling of vacancy was as easy as a trustee nominating somebody and voting. But in this juncture and this time, I think opening it up to applications and finding people who are interested in running is very important. In the past, we've asked the question during the interview process, are you willing to run again? And you kind of get a feel for those who are willing, and they probably have questions about that, about doing that. So it's kind of nice to have that on the table to say this is something that is a possibility in the future. If you get this seat, you will have to run for it in 2 years. So we certainly want to let that be known.
Thank you, Trustee Gregory. Other comments, questions?
President Wagers.
Trustee Oppenheimer?
I would clarify that it wouldn't be, yeah, I don't think that we would say you have to run, but
Right.
certainly we would want them.
Are you willing?
Are you willing to run, right? But I don't think that would be a criteria if they said no, or if something happens, or things happen.
Yeah.
But we would certainly want someone who would be willing to, if possible.
From my experience, it's hard to make trustees do anything. But it would, I agree. We would like someone that would have interest, especially after it's a hard job with little pay and lots of time, but it's great to have folks that, they get to make sure that the job fits them. So that, this is a chance to try it out a little bit, but we'd like people who have that intention of moving on for another term, if possible.
President Wagers, I have one more.
Trustee Oppenheimer?
I also think if we're looking at the makeup of the current board, I would love to see somebody who does have kids in the district. I'm not sure outside of me if there's anyone else that has kids in the district, but I think having that lens on the board as a parent is really important as well.
Thank you, Trustee Oppenheimer. I agree with that. We could also look at areas within the district, I think would be an interesting thing to consider as well, just to make sure that we have the breadth that we can. But I mean, this is the nice part about having the opportunity to appoint, is we get to look at, kind of that myriad of options we get with, and hopefully we get as many people as possible that are interested in the job. It would be great. But we can pick from those qualities that best serve the district and best serve the community, and really best serve kids. And back to your point, if you have kids in the district and are in the middle of that, it's a different feel, for sure. Any other questions or comments on the process and candidates and
President Wagers?
Vice President Greeley?
I agree with both trustees Oppenheimer and Gregory. My preference would be to do the open up the process to candidates applying. I really like the timeline that was suggested to us by the administration. It's very neat and simple, and that's my preference, is to do it that way. I think that allows us the transparency and the possibility of getting the best candidate. And then we can look at, with the skill sets that we want to see.
Great. Thank you, Vice President Greeley. Anyone else like to weigh in on this process? Trustee Gregory.
I guess just in terms of characteristics and skill sets that are needed on the board, we have a varied board now. We have financial experience. We have with Trustee Esty and Trustee Wagers. We have community health and organizational experience from Trustee Oppenheimer. We have systemic organization experience with Trustee Doan, and educational background from myself and Trustee Greeley. And Trustee Esty brings a legal piece. Those are all components that have benefited the district and the work of the board. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so do we have any holes? And that might just be something that we need to think about, and maybe have a discussion as we go down the road a little bit. And I'm not seeing a glaring one right now, and but I would just suggest that we consider that for a later discussion, possibly.
Thank you, Trustee Gregory. I mean, that is important. We want as well-rounded a board as possible, yet still focused on what's best for kids. I'll go back to that again. That's always kind of my lens anyway. But yes, I mean, and people that can work with each other too. Not always agree, and that's not essential. But we want people who will add to the conversation. So I'd just like to outline the timeline just a second. I mean, right now we're looking at declaring the board vacant. We did that today already on October 23rd. So we'd make it open for 3 days for nominations, and folks can, I believe, can nominate themselves, or they can, you know, have other people nominate them. Hopefully they're doing themselves, really, because it's a job you need to decide you want to do yourself. And then we'll do an application review process. And then we'll appoint hopefully a new board member by the board meeting in November. Trustee Greeley, do you have anything to add as far as the process goes, and what kind of how you hope to lead your committee through that process?
Thank you, President Wagers. And just one clarification that the applicants have we have 3 weeks to get applications in. You know, we have had questions on that. So even if someone nominated somebody else, they're still going to have to, the applicant will still have to fill out and answer questions. And I think the important piece, the next piece that the committee is going to need to do, and we can send out the questions that we've used in the past and get trustee feedback today. I mean, send it out today and get trustee feedback. And I think that's the first thing that if everyone agrees on doing this process, is that we look at the questions we want to ask, and that should kind of hone in on what's important for us to understand about each candidate. So really it's trustee, you know, the board decision, and hopefully Dennis and I and the rest of the team from the administration can just kind of make it a little bit more streamlined for us to kind of keep moving along quickly. I think the first thing we're gonna have to do is decide on those questions and get that packet available to the public.
So you have a preliminary packet from previous processes, I'm assuming?
President Wagers, yes. We have used the same questions, I believe, each time. And that, again, like I said, we'll have Clerk Mast send those out today and have the trustees take a look at that. And then when we meet tomorrow for the committee, I think we can move forward with that then. Decide on if we need to make some changes and let the trustees know. Trustee Doan, does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, I'd say the only thing that we need just a little more feedback from any trustees, you know, on that from October 26th to November 6th, we'll be doing an application review, and that's kind of broad. Are we going to do in-person interviews? And I think that's what you're saying, to look at those questions. We might get that scheduled so that we all have that on our calendar. We did last time when I was appointed, where the candidates came to a board meeting too and spoke for a few minutes. That was really weird. I didn't have good direction on the purpose and intent and what was expected, and it was weird. So I'd say let's cut that out. So but any other feedback for us is just an interview with each candidate enough? Is there anything else anybody else wants in the process other than that?
Thank you, Vice President Greeley and Trustee Doan. I mean, it's an interesting question, and it may depend on the number of applicants and the quality of applicants that we get. I mean, we may get 6, and there may be one that's like everybody says, why are we messing around with? Or we may get 15 and 8 of them are great, and that will be harder, but that's a good problem to have. So I think maybe that process may depend on, you know, the quality and kinds of applicants we get. We do have a workshop planned, I think, on the 30th of October already. So that may, you know, take a piece of that workshop. We'll have to see, or I'm sure we will probably have to have an additional special meeting to, you know, maybe to do interviews if we have several candidates applied that are quality is my guess. Any other questions? Any other comments on that process?
President Wagers.
Trustee Oppenheimer.
Thank you. You know, one of the things that I hope that we can do as we are communicating the vacancy and the opening and doing a call for nominee or applications, I think it would be good if we can have Ryan and Dan also share information about the role of trustees and what that looks like and what that means. I believe that we have that somewhere on our website. just so that folks who are thinking about this opportunity are clear about what our role is. I think that, you know, the various emails that we get and whatnot, I don't think that there's a lot of clarity on what our role is and what our role is not. So if there's a way that we can put that out there with the call for applicants, I think that that would be really great.
President Wagers, may I?
Mr. Holler.
President Wagers and members of the board and Superintendent Dennis and Deputy Superintendent Roberts, just a quick comment here about what Trustee Oppenheimer said. I visited briefly with Ryan and Sharon yesterday, and certainly from the standpoint of the volume of work that's associated with the positions, we will definitely make sure that people understand what is part of being a trustee. I know as part of the previous packets that we have put together for an appointment process, that has been included. We can certainly make that prominent as well on our website. And speaking of communication, obviously dependent upon the board's decision today, we stand ready to communicate about what the board decides today as far as the process and the timeline, and get that out. So, and our further communication commitment to communication further going on as the committee meets tomorrow, and making sure that we're very transparent in that regard. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holler. And so a little pressure on trustees probably. I think that committee could use the input as quickly as possible from us. So as you get that email with the questions today, it would be great to have it done by tomorrow morning. If you can get your input in by then, because that'll just make their job that much easier.
President Wagers.
Trustee Gregory.
I think that in terms, you know, I think that trustees ought to be willing to just have a conversation with anybody who wants to call, curious about the office or position. That has happened in the past a couple of times, but not a whole lot. But I know that that the clerk often is the touch point. You know, she's the one who takes the application, has an opportunity to discuss, but on occasion, possible candidates have reached out to trustees, and, you know, you can kind of share what it's like. And if you know somebody who, you know, you think would be interested, you could encourage them to supply an application. But I think one of the pieces that comes with the application is a resume, which is always helpful, because, you know, a resume kind of gives you a snapshot of what where the person has been and the work that they've done and their interests, et cetera. And so, you know, I think I think it's great for us to look at the packet and especially those questions and return them as soon as possible. But, you know, it'll just be very interesting to see who shows an interest in this position.
Well, and that's an interesting topic, Trustee Gregory, because I think when I went through the appointment process, we were asked not to contact trustees.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was part of the packet. That was hard for me. I remember that because I wanted to know about the job. So I think that's something we need to think about, and actually it'd be great to decide that today. If we feel like it's okay to talk to trustees, and maybe we would even have trustees that Clerk Mass could refer to and say, okay, these 3 trustees are willing to talk about the job, or all mm-hmm. trustees are willing to talk about the job. Whoever would be willing and able to do that. But I don't know, that's up for discussion. I guess I would be in favor of that, just because I don't want people to hop into something they think, oh, this is like 5 hours a month and it's really cool and we get to make big decisions and we get to decide what happens at the school district all the time. There's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes, and it's a collaborative effort. It's not just one person making those decisions. But I'd like to hear other comments on that as well.
President Wagers.
Trustee Doan.
Yeah, I think we should be open to talk to anybody, and we should be recruiting people. I have already recruited some myself, so we should be actively recruiting people to apply and answering anybody's questions so that they understand what the job is and can talk to us. So I hope we include that as part of our process.
Thank you, Trustee Doan. Any other comments?
President Wagers.
Trustee Essie? No.
Oppenheimer.
Trustee.
Trustee Oppenheimer.
Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Greeley. I would be in favor of opening it up for anyone to talk to any of us. I mean, I will, Alicia's sitting right here, so yeah, she says yes too.
Agreed.
Thank you. Sorry, I think I missed Trustee Vice President Greeley. Did you have a comment as well?
President Wagers, yeah, no worries. So I really don't care what people choose to do with that. I would give you another perspective. In the past, part of the reason we didn't have people reach out to trustees is because, unlike a general election, we are appointing. And so there was some kind of protectiveness for ourselves of not coming across as being partial to certain candidates. So that was a reason for that in the past. I think it's changed a lot where the board was a little more insular from the appointment process, where we didn't seek out candidates in the past. I would just caution trustees to be aware that when you, I think it's great that you guys know people and are getting people to apply. It gets sticky sometimes when maybe the person you asked to run is not the best candidate. It's become, I've watched it get challenging that way. So that's all. I don't mind how we do it at all. Just to be aware that there can be some unintended consequences with that, just to be cautious.
President Wagers.
Thank you, Vice President Greeley. Trustee Gregory.
I think the takeaway that I get from Trustee Greeley's comment is that everyone needs to know that it's a vote of the board, and we're all just one person on the board. And so we invite candidates to apply, and then the board has to, sift that based on where, who we best feel will serve the board and the district to the best, but we all get one vote. So, that being said, that's all you can promise them. Hey, we think you'd be a great candidate. Put your name in. Here's what the job looks like. But in the end, I only get one vote.
Thank you, Trustee Gregory. And I kind of agree. I mean, I think in some ways it's great to have, lots of people interested in the job. But the great part about our board is I really trust everybody in here to make a decision, whether they brought somebody forward for the board and said, hey, I like this person, but then they'll realize, oh, you know what? This other person maybe fits the board and the situation that we're in better. And you never know who's going to bubble to the top, but it's great to have people to have those options. So at least I'm all in favor of folks, at least getting, so we have a good slate of folks to pick from. That's my real goal. Any other questions or comments on that piece of it? Seems like we're mostly in concurrence on that subject. Any questions on the process and trying to move through that? I will probably give a little leeway to that committee to make some of those decisions if that's, unless there's some real problems with the board. I mean, we'll try and make trustees aware as we go along, kind of where that committee is moving towards. But as we get, depending on how many candidates we have, the quality of candidates, obviously the committee won't be sifting out candidates. That's not their job. It's not their job to rank them. That's none of their job. But what their job is to help us with that process of sorting through those candidates. Anything else on the trustee appointment process? I'm not sure, and we can talk about this a little bit, if this is actually an action item, because it's more just a process that we have in place, and there's no, it may depend on the number of applicants we have and the quality of applicants as well. So I'm not sure that there's an action item associated with it, but if there's any discussion about that, fine to hear that.
President Wagers. My understanding is not it's not an action item, because our action item was declaring a vacancy, which puts in place a policy. And then it's a communication that this is the process. I would say that, we do have, because we have a 90-day window, if we do not get what is in terms of the board considered a qualified candidate, if we don't find the one that we want, we can decide to do this again. So that's, in my experience, we haven't ever done that, but that's always something that we can do. But I don't think that this is an action item in terms of approving the process. It's just a communication strategy.
Great, thank you. And that is one thing, by kind of acting on this quickly, it does give us room, if we need to go back to the well and say, we're not happy with any of those folks, let's do it again. We have that option. So it gives us some options. Any other questions or comments on the appointment process?
Sorry,
Vice President Greeley.
Sorry, President Wages, I thought you finished. I just want to clarify that policy 1131R point 3, the board will determine the selection process and determinations will be made in open session. So just as long as we're making a really clear determination in this session, then I'm comfortable with it.
So my question back to you, Vice President Greeley, have we done that?
I don't think so yet. I'd like to kind of clarify that if everyone's on board, if I can relay back what I've heard so far is that trustees want to go with the process where we accept nominations from candidates that reside within the Boise School District, and that we follow the timeline that was suggested by the administration. Is that what you guys are hearing? Is that clear?
Yep.
Is everybody on the same page with the understanding of that?
And we're going to give feedback on the questions today for your meeting tomorrow. And then that will go out with Dan in a communication.
Sorry, President Wagers, that's accurate to me.
Okay. Any other questions? Trustee Doan, Trustee Esty, Trustee Oppenheimer?
No, we're good.
Excellent. Of course you're good. You're on your Oregon coast. No, you're at a board meeting on the Oregon coast. Maybe not as good as you could be. Well, we'll try and get you out of there. So I think Trustee Greeley, Vice President Greeley, back to you. Just to make sure that you and your committee have enough information to work with. Are you good with your marching orders at this point?
President Wagers, my marching orders are clear. Trustee Doan, you too? Okay.
Great. All right. So we'll move on to the next thing. Board Superintendent comments. Any comments from the board or the superintendency?
Trustee Wagers, President Wagers.
Trustee Gregory.
I would just remind you that the Isba Convention is coming up in November. It's going to be all virtual. And this year we get to register for a flat rate that gets us all in and all the classes and the workshops, etc. So if you have to put one thing on your calendar, I'd put the business session, so that we'll need to decide if we all get together on a Zoom call and participate, or we'll have to talk about how we're going to participate in that business session. But those sessions are important in terms of setting the legislative directive for our staff down at the legislature and the 2 bylaw changes. So just a reminder that that's coming up.
Great. Thank you, Trustee Gregory. Any other board superintendency comments? All right. Just like to remind everybody, we are educating today for a better tomorrow. Wait, did somebody have a comment?
Nope, I'll let you finish and then I'll make my comment.
I'm finished. I'll let you go now.
In my new and exciting role, I'd like to move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, everybody have a great day. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.